Have you ever looked at something small and forgotten, something no one else seemed to care about, and wondered, could this be turned into something amazing? Something that could make a real difference? Well, sometimes all it takes is one person with a vision to transform the world around them. Meet Samuel. A humble, elderly man living in a small town where time seemed to have stood still. The streets were quiet, the people distant, and everything appeared to be just ordinary. Samuel lived alone, quietly tending to his simple life, and although he wasn't wealthy, he possessed something that money couldn't buy: a deep love for nature and an unshakable belief in the potential for beauty in every corner of life. One day, while walking down the road near his home, Samuel came upon a piece of land that many had long forgotten about. It was a plot that the town had once intended to develop into something useful, but it had fallen into neglect. Overgrown weeds and patches of cracked asphalt were scattered everywhere, with litter strewn about carelessly. It was a mess, a blight on the landscape that seemed to reflect the fading spirit of the town itself. Most people walked by this plot without a second thought, treating it as an eyesore, as if it were a part of the town's history that should be erased, forgotten, left to rot. But Samuel saw something others didn't. He saw potential. He saw life waiting to bloom, a hidden beauty waiting to emerge. So, every day, with his weathered gloves and small gardening tools, Samuel began his work. He'd return to the lot, clear away the trash, pull the weeds, and slowly start planting seeds. Not for himself, mind you, but for the future of the community, for a place where children could run, where people could gather, and where the town could find its heart again. At first, there was no applause, no thanks, no one even noticed. Samuel worked in solitude, the sound of his shovel against the earth the only noise in the quiet of the lot. He'd hum softly to himself, working tirelessly day by day, planting flowers here, shrubs there, and adding a few trees that would eventually grow tall enough to provide shade in the years to come. He worked with patience, understanding that not all things would bear fruit quickly. He was, after all, in it for the long haul. Weeks turned into months, and still, most of the townspeople ignored him. Some would pass by and shake their heads. Some would mutter to themselves, "That's just old Samuel, out there talking to the dirt again. What's the point?" But Samuel didn't need validation. He didn't need their approval. He had a belief, and that belief kept him going. He believed that even the most neglected space could be turned into something beautiful, if only someone cared enough to try. Then one day, as Samuel was watering the freshly planted flowers, a small child named Emily walked past him. She had seen him before, but this time she stopped. Her big brown eyes stared at the colorful blooms Samuel had managed to coax out of the barren soil. "Why are you doing this?" she asked in a voice filled with curiosity. Samuel paused, looking up at her with a gentle smile. He could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the same uncertainty he'd seen in his own life when the world had seemed too big and too difficult. "Because everything deserves a chance to grow," he replied simply. "Even the things people have forgotten about." Emily stood there for a moment, silently considering his words. Then, without saying another word, she turned and walked away. It was just a brief exchange, but to Samuel, it was a moment of connection. It was a small spark of hope. As the days passed, something amazing began to happen. Emily wasn't the only one who noticed the transformation happening in the once-forgotten lot. One by one, townspeople began to stop and take notice. At first, they were skeptical. What could this old man possibly be doing? But then, they saw it. A garden slowly emerging from the chaos of neglect. The lot was starting to look beautiful. More people stopped. Some, who had walked past without a thought, now paused to admire the colorful flowers, the freshly planted trees, the neatly trimmed bushes. One by one, they began to take notice of what Samuel had done. Some offered to help, others brought in tools, and a few even brought plants of their own to add to the growing garden. It wasn't long before the children started coming around. At first, they were just curious, but soon they started joining Samuel in his work. They dug alongside him, laughed as they picked flowers together, and learned from him the art of patience. Samuel had always said that gardening was about more than just planting. It was about cultivating something deeper, and the children began to understand that. The parents of the children were also beginning to see the change. A mother, whose son had been prone to trouble, found him spending his free time in the garden instead of causing mischief. "I don't know what it is about this place," she told Samuel one afternoon, "but I've never seen him so calm. It's like this garden has given him peace." The town had begun to change, slowly at first, but it was undeniable. What had once been a place of disrepair had become a place of gathering, of community, of life. People no longer passed by the lot without a second glance. They stopped. They took photos. They shared stories. And most importantly, they began to speak to one another again. One afternoon, as Samuel sat on the bench, watching a group of children run through the garden, Emily returned. This time she wasn't alone. She was with a group of children, all eager to help plant new flowers and vegetables in the garden. Emily smiled as she handed Samuel a handful of seeds. "I've brought some friends," she said softly. "We want to help too." Samuel looked at the children, their faces full of excitement and hope, and he felt a warmth in his chest. This was it. This was the legacy he had been building, one small act of kindness at a time. "Of course," he said with a smile. "Let's get to work." As the days went on, more people joined in. The garden continued to grow, and with it, so did the sense of community and belonging. What had once been an empty lot was now a thriving space that belonged to everyone. And it was all because one person believed that even the most forgotten things could become something beautiful. The transformation of the lot was a reminder to the town that all it took to make a difference was the willingness to take the first step, to care for something, and to believe that change was possible. Samuel's garden had become more than just a garden. It had become a symbol of hope, a living testament to the power of patience, care, and determination. Samuel didn't seek praise for what he had done. His joy was in watching the people come together, in seeing how something as simple as a few flowers could bring hope and joy to a community that had long since forgotten what it was like to care for one another. The garden was a gift to everyone, but it was also a gift to himself, a reminder that beauty could be created, no matter the circumstances. One day, as Samuel sat watching the sunset over the now blooming garden, he realized that the real legacy wasn't in the flowers or the trees. It was in the people, the ones who had come together to make it happen, who had learned the true meaning of community. And as the last rays of sunlight bathed the garden in golden light, Samuel knew his quiet work had not just transformed a lot, it had transformed lives. Sometimes, the greatest legacies aren't the monuments we build or the things we accumulate. Sometimes, they are the quiet, gentle acts of care that bring people together, that make the world a little more beautiful. And Samuel's legacy was one that would bloom in the hearts of his community forever. Thank you for joining me here at Timeless Storyscape. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Until next time, remember that every small act of kindness can lead to something beautiful.